dead.
Wake the dead! Wake the dead!
With Sean McCann. Greetings, and welcome to Wake the Dead. Today, we are blessed to have a returning guest, Mr. Mark Passio. We got into Mark's history and the organization that he used to be involved in our last show. He spoke about the structure of LaVeyan Satanism and how it is integrated into the world, the control structure of humanity. It was a very informative show, and one of my most listened to shows, and I greatly thank you for bringing that information to us. Today we are here again to speak about the most important topic of your podcast, and that is solipsism and the general denial of truth. Welcome, Mark. Please, hello.
Sean, thank you so much for inviting me back on the show. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm very honored to have you here. You started your show, was it 12 years ago? I guess that's where it was when it was posted.
Yes.
And I discovered your work shortly after that. And it has... I was searching, I was listening voraciously to all podcasts. And when I heard your podcast, well, originally I heard you on Red Ice Radio with Henrik, and that was great. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And it's exactly what I'm looking for. I didn't know it, but I was like, bing, that's it. Okay. And I went and followed you over to your website, which is whatonearthishappening.com. And I clicked on you. You told the listeners on Red Ice that it's best to start from podcast number 1 and to listen to your podcast unfold a rich tapestry of knowledge. And it's all the way that you laid it out. It starts with the most important topic, and that is that what you described it as the realization that truth exists independently of your own perceptions. Would you like to explain to us why you chose that?
Well, I chose that because if people don't understand that there's things that are either objectively true or false versus something that an opinion could be formed about, and there is no truth about it inherently, then they're going to be led astray from the very beginning, from the total beginning of the whole process.
Right.
And I wanted to start firmly by establishing that people have to abandon this idea, this false notion that truth can be whatever we're comfortable with or whatever we want it to be. Truth can be very, very disturbing and still be the case. Truth can be something that is completely contrary to our existing perceptions and our existing opinions on how things are or should be, and still be the case. And that really is a blow to the ego. And I really wanted to start with that because that's kind of going to separate the wheat from the chaff as far as listeners go, as far as people who want and are going to go further into the exploration of these topics and this material. So I started almost with like a sledgehammer to human perception. And I mean, if you think about the concept of solipsism in and of itself and how this is pushed in our society, it's a new religion. I mean, it's not that new. It's been around for, probably hundreds, if not thousands of years, but it's being pushed now as a religious belief system, honestly, is really what it is.
Right.
And, I called it in the beginning of my podcast series, the biggest lie. If you fall for the biggest lie, that there is no objective truth, then you're finished before you ever begin. You're finished before being initiated into the real material that you need to understand and that you need to integrate into your own self and then act in alignment with. You're not even going to be able to make the realization and the acceptance that certain things are true, and that is an objective thing that exists outside of our individual perceptions of events and of reality, and what our goal and our work needs to be to do. What we have to make our internal work to do is to align our perceptions that are individual to us to the objective reality, to the extent that we are able to do that, to within the best of our ability to do.
Right.
And if we do that, then we'll be really, on the right path in life. We'll be making strides to, try to improve ourselves and the human condition in general.
We'll be able to affect the world.
That's
we would
right.
be able, without that understanding of the reality of things, how can you, like, if the ship is going with the stream in that direction and you want to go that way, how is it that like stepping on it will bring you to where you want to be? I mean,
Right.
it's totally divorcing your actions from your will.
You
Right?
think about it in a very general sense. You have to be able to accurately determine the variables of the situation all around you, and
Right.
even inside of yourself, within your own consciousness. If you have no way of objectively determining what is actually happening, you don't really have consciousness. That is the definition of consciousness, is the ability to discern what is actually taking place. That would be one of my definitions for consciousness.
Right.
And just think about people saying that's all relative and it's all could be different for everybody, and it's all just a matter of perception and whim. See,
Right.
there's no truth as to whether you like vanilla oat milk ice cream. Right? There's no truth about that, right? Well, there is a truth whether you do like it or
In
not.
relation to
There's
me,
there's no
yeah, but
truth
just to
as
me,
to
right.
if it is really, really, really delicious, right?
Right.
That is dependent upon either my perception or your perception. Okay.
Right.
I had some oat milk based vanilla ice cream last
I
night.
bet it was
and
good. Yeah.
Extremely enjoyed it. You
Good.
might taste the same thing and spit it out. So there is no truth regarding whether something that is a matter of opinion is good or not, or bad or not. That is relative. That is based in perception. That is based in preference. But
Right.
as to whether or not, let's just pick any scenario, as to whether or not 19 hijackers actually brought down 3 buildings in New York with their nefarious plan on 9/11/2001, or whether that was something
Right.
more than what met the eye and what the mainstream media and government told us.
Right.
Then there is a truth regarding that. There is a truth of what unfolded on that day versus what we were told unfolded. And
Right.
that's not a matter of opinion or perception. If one gathers enough data, one can at least recognize that what was told to us was not true. Whether anybody has the total picture of that or not is
Right.
another story. But the whole point is, when you employ the trivium process, you can determine objectively what is real, what is not real, what is truth versus what is falsehood or a
Right.
lie. And what solipsists would tell you is that's impossible. You cannot actually know anything. There is no epistemological method for determining what is fact versus what is fantasy or made up in the mind, because it's coming through a filter of perception, and therefore perception is all that exists. And that's inherent in the word, right? So I like to always start with the definitions of words because they reveal so much importance about what the actual meaning of the term is and why it was structured the way it was in the very beginnings of the English language by the people who were formulating our language, why they chose some of the ancient Latin and Greek root words to determine what the word was actually going to be in the English language. So if you look at the etymological origin of the word solipsism, the word sole in Latin means alone or by oneself. And the word ipse in Latin literally means the self. Okay. So
Wow.
both parts of the word, okay, mean when you put them together, all alone by oneself, by oneself with no one else there. Literally, that's what it means. So now just think about that, right? If we are really talking about what the etymological origin is telling us about what this word means, what this belief system is, solipsism, it literally means that the person is basically claiming that they are all that exists. And that actually is what solipsism is. If you look up the definition, it means that the only thing that is certain to exist is one's own mind, and there is no such thing as objective truth. All that exists is the perception of the self, and it is an impossibility to determine factually whether something is true or not. There is no tool set for doing that, and perception and opinion of the self is all that matters. And now think about how selfish,
right,
arrogant, totally self-absorbed one would have to be to believe that the only thing that exists and matters is one's own mind and perceptions.
Right.
Now, I would argue, if we are going to relate this back to the former show that we did last time I was on Wake the Dead, I would actually argue that this ideology is Satanism just wearing another mask. It's Satanism wearing a philosophical mask.
Right.
Because what is Satanism? We defined
Ego.
all the tenets of Satanism, and the ultimate tenet is it's all about pure self-indulgence. It's about selfishness. It's about seeing the self as the only thing that truly ultimately matters. And that's what solipsism is as an ideology. Solipsism is the ideology that all that matters is my perceptions. There's no one else. I mean, this is like the literal worst driver on the road, the most arrogant, destructive driver on the road. There's nobody else on the road but me. I could do a swing into this lane, I'll swing into that lane. That doesn't make a difference what I do because I'm the only one here. There's no other drivers on the road whose lives are at stake. It's literally like that, except from an ideological point of view.
And I think we spoke on the other show about how Satanism is working to push Satanism ideology on the masses to create an entire satanic society in the aggregate. Like you call it mini-me Satanism. And this solipsism seems like a huge hammer for wielding that into society.
Now, that's a dual-edged sword, and it could be kind of like a conundrum, so to speak, because if you really look at the ideology of at least LaVeyan Satanism as a sect within the whole network of worldwide Satanism, they say that solipsism is one of the satanic sins, believe it or not. They have things that they say to their own membership as actual knowing Satanists, right? So we're going to make the distinction now between Satanists who willfully take up their role as a Satanist and know in their own minds, I am choosing the ideology of Satanism willfully, and I am trying to enact a particular agenda onto humanity, okay? Those are the very minor amount of people, okay? By numbers, that's the small amount. Okay, probably less than 1% worldwide. Some people would say it's a little bit more than that. But the ones that they actually put on their mental hook so to speak, the ones that they actually indoctrinate into certain beliefs, are most of humanity,
Right.
the great unwashed masses, the great ignorant masses of humanity.
Yes.
And what they want for them is different than what they want for themselves, because they
Right.
want for themselves to be rulers of the whole world, and they want for other people to be slaves, to be completely ruled and be enslaved and do whatever they tell them. So you have to understand that while solipsism could be considered satanic, it's satanic for the people that they want to inculcate into a lesser variation of their religious belief structure, which is all about selfishness. But they themselves say a Satanist that really wants to act as the ruler, one of the rulers of the world, one of the elite class or the ruling class, should never engage in solipsism, because they, as the rulers, have to know there is truth. There is an objective truth, and it should be reserved for them to know. And
Right.
everybody else should just be fighting about opinions with each other as
Right.
they are ruled by the elitists. So solipsism is given to the slave class. And they actually literally will say this. They will say, these things which we are never to do should always be encouraged for the people that we want to rule over to do. Because
Right.
if they do those things, they're easier to rule.
Yes. And with vice and with the follies that come from this, like I spoke earlier, it divorces you from your will. And for the Satanists, their will is most important. They want their will to be enacted in this world,
That's right.
so they have to see all the workings of the gears in around them, so that they can apply their will properly. And they don't want the slaves to have any way to apply their will,
Right.
so they're spinning in these cul-de-sacs.
That's right.
And if they are most comfortable in a satanic society, the only way to get that is in the aggregate. So they have to, if they want to create a satanic world for them to rule in and be most comfortable at the seat of the table, they have to convince everyone else to be satanic. I mean, what you're doing with your work is you're trying to convince everyone else to be moral and to
Right.
recognize morality. We're not going to get a moral world unless everybody else agrees and starts acting in that fashion.
Because they
But
have to determine the objectivity of morality. That
right,
morality is not a matter of opinion, it's not a matter of perception or whim or preference. The behaviors that we enact exist in the natural domain, in the three-dimensional natural world. And so the characteristics of those behaviors are not constructs of mind. They exist in the three-dimensional
that's right,
natural world. So
that's
they
right,
are objective. They are not
yeah,
subjective. They are not mental constructs.
right.
They actually have objective realities. They have objective consequences, etc.
Right. Just like it's subjective that other people have souls inhabiting their flesh, and other people do feel pain the same as we do. And when we can recognize that objective truth, then we can recognize if we cause pain, then that's bad. Right. So therefore, morality does exist no matter what. If someone can feel pain from your actions, then morality is relevant to that. And that's all. People need to, if they've never heard you, they should please check out your natural law presentation. It's a long one, but take it in chunks, and you start with the very basic blocks and put it all together. It's very informative, and the information is passed freely and easily to anybody's ear. So I highly encourage everyone to hear that.
Yeah, I would
Um,
say that's my most important material out of everything that I've ever put out. And it definitely contains the information about solipsism within it. It's a jumping off point, solipsism. That's why
mm,
I began my whole, uh, you know, um, podcast series with it. Because if you just follow the progression logically, if someone doesn't believe that there's truth, and they believe that truth is just relative to perception, then what is the next thing that they're going to believe? They're going to believe that there's no real right and wrong, and
right.
that right and wrong is all relative to perception. So we jump from the very first tenet of Satanism, which we covered last time, selfishness, right? Self-absorption, seeing the self as all that ultimately matters. Well, that is a form of solipsism.
Yes.
Ultimately, solipsism leads to that kind of selfishness, you could say.
Yes.
The belief in solipsism puts you into a satanic mentality from a perspective of selfishness.
Right. The selfishness is the door that opens up the rest of the tenets.
Correct.
With the selfishness, then comes the moral relativism.
That's right.
Then comes the I'm better than everyone, and then comes I can kill them.
That's right.
It's like
you see the progression. You can see the ideological progression, which is why they want people in a solipsistic mind state.
Yes.
Because, as you said, the next thing that will come is moral relativism. There's no such thing as objective right or wrong, right? That's all relative. We can make it up, but it can be according to our preferences, our likes, our whims, our perception.
Right.
That's the next thing that comes after solipsism. And then, as you said, that degrades into, well, we're better than other people because they don't understand this. They don't think this way. And therefore, we should set up a stratified society where we're the rulers. They're our subjects and slaves. We rule over them as a ruling class. And that's perfectly fine and natural and normal. And it should be that way. And then, the final progression is the final solution. We could just get rid of those that we consider undesirables, and that's eugenics. That's a eugenics society. That's a society that is actively engaging in culling people that they feel are slaves that have grown to too large of a population in numbers, and they're just going to cull them. And that's what we're actually in the middle of right now. We're in the middle of that great culling.
Exactly that.
The beginning of it, anyway.
Right. And I mean, there's been iterations of it. In the recent history, we had the Nazis, and we had Mao, and we had Stalin, and these other forms, these structures that were created by the greater global Satanism, created these as like, let's see if this will work. Oh, okay, let's try this one. Okay, so now this is the new one that's being rolled out. We've been like on my own show, we talked about it a bunch, about how this is a killing. And
they call it the Great Reset, so, and what that means is they're resetting people. They're not resetting the society, they're the system, they're resetting people. That's what they're resetting. The number that they want to reset is the population.
As Bill Gates says, we need to get that one of these numbers down to about 0. Right. And if you listen to the word itself, reset, like set is the dark, that's the in Egypt, that is the Satan force. So
bringing Set back again.
The
darkness.
Exactly. And wow, this is great to have you here talking about this. So, like, how did we get here? I believe is solipsism. I mean, 12 years ago, you were warning us. You're like, hey, this is bad. Free yourself from this mental slavery, guys. And those that didn't listen or didn't have, the nescient or ignorant either, time has progressed, and organized Satanism has churned their wheels. And now we find ourselves in this place where, I don't know if you've seen this movie, documentary recently, What is a Woman?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Like, everyone is born from a woman, and these people, they can't even describe with words. They can't.
Right.
Because they're so divorced from truth. And like traditional solipsism, what you were explaining to me earlier, is self only. But if you look at the solipsism that is happening in the world, it's not self, it's collectivism.
Of course.
And everybody is, instead of their own perceptions, they see the TV, and the TV feeds them, and they link onto that with a solipsistic mindset. And instead of it being it's only me, it's only the collective now.
Right. It's only people that think like us, that have our shared perceptions, and the social bond that comes with that. And all that is a group of slaves thinking the same way because they accepted the thoughts that their masters told them to think.
Right.
I just want to say that again. All that is a group of slaves all thinking the same way because they're thinking the thoughts that their masters commanded them to think.
Right.
And you know what that amounts to? A big pile of garbage, a big pile of trash.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't see themselves that way, right? People in the collective, total unconscious, enslaved mindset actually believe that they're virtuous. They believe virtue comes from the collective.
Yes.
Instead of coming from an individual who truly understands objective morality, which should be every individual. There should be nothing special in that individual. That individual has just recognized something as simple as, there's solid ground beneath our feet.
Right.
We're not falling toward the center of the earth because we're walking on solid ground. Something as simple as that, right?
Some people deny gravity even.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. This is a glass with water in it. As simple as that, objective truth as that. That's how much people should totally recognize true objective morality as individuals, with their perception. They should be able to fully cognize and understand that.
Right.
And that's speaking to how bad things have gotten in that time period. And it was already bad, but it got drastically worse in those 12 years. I've been telling people what is really going on. I've predicted exactly what would happen. I've been completely spot on. I've been completely accurate in how society would degrade. It went exactly as I said, because I understood the dynamics even back then and even before then. Right. And it's painful to watch that unfold practically.
Our families even. Right. They just,
sure.
You question the TV? Well, hell with you, and I am virtuous for saying so.
Imagine that they have so little faith in themselves. They have so little innate intelligence. And then they're really subconsciously and at a conscious level realizing how dumb they are because of how much they have not really paid attention to reality and put in study and read eclectically, etc. They realize they're so stupid that they want some external force, some external entity to tell them what reality is. Once again, how could there be any bigger piece of trash than that? How could you not realize that makes you a bad person? That's what I'm trying. That's the main thing I'm trying to figure out is these people, if you ask them, are you a good and decent person? Are you a moral being? They'll say, yes, absolutely, I am. No, people like that are pieces of verminous garbage trash 100%. When it comes to being moral. They're not moral at all because they'll do whatever someone else tells them to do or believe in whatever someone else tells them to believe. They'll say, you have to think of this as a completely fluid thing when in fact there's a truth about it. And they'll say, yes, master, I will think about that as a completely relative thing. That if
it's relative, they don't even choose where the point is. They listen to the other guy tell them where the goalpost is. That's where relative
and they'll
now,
keep moving it back and forth. And again, that's in 1984, written by Orwell. Okay, that's what he said. Solipsism, as a word, comes up in the book toward the end, in one of the end chapters, and he's talking to O'Brien, the handler for the state, and he says, "This isn't solipsism." Because solipsism would mean that everybody is free to just believe whatever they want. It's not that. Okay. He's saying it kind of you could say it starts with that as we're talking about here. Right. But what it progresses to is the state will tell you whatever reality is. So what he is saying,
2 plus 2 is 5.
Solipsism isn't 2 plus 2 is 5. Solipsism, that's solipsism. People can say 2 plus 2 is 5, 2 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 2 is 8. And that's each individual is free to believe whatever they want to believe about it. That's solipsism. O'Brien in 1984, as an allegorical example, is saying that's not what we're creating. We're creating the state by which 2 plus 2 is whatever we say it is, and everyone else accepts that as the reality. So it could change. It could be 5 this week. It could be 8 next week. It could be 7 the week after that. And everybody will believe it's 5, 8, and 7 progressively in those weeks. That is the worldview. That is the overall world system that they are building toward and that they want to ultimately create. That they are the arbiters of truth. And as soon as they command what the truth is, everyone else must accept it from a worldview perspective. Otherwise, there will be consequences and punishment in the physical.
So that sounds very familiar to what's happening today, Mark.
Yeah. Yep. With the whole COVID narrative.
Right.
Exactly. And that's why I
Yeah.
did the presentation called Worldview Violence. Because as soon as you say we're the arbiters of truth and we're going to push that onto you, and if you don't obey, there's going to be consequences for you in your life, that's violence.
Right.
That is the definition of violence from an ideological perspective. You know, people don't understand. We're not just confronted with duress, which is the threat of physical violence. We're confronted with worldview violence.
Right.
The idea that things will be taken away from you, or you will be ostracized, or you won't have the rights that you used to have if you don't believe what we tell you to believe.
Right.
And I say, screw that.
Hell yeah.
People pushing that are trash. The people accepting that are trash.
Right.
And this is the thing. People have to just start saying this. I tell people that say, oh, do you want to put a mask on? No, I don't believe in that bullshit.
Right.
I will not enforce that worldview. That worldview isn't true.
It's false.
Fake. It's false.
Right.
I have accurately determined it to be false. So I will not give it any credence and power over me. And I will not show people a display of that by putting a mask on and saying their worldview is accurate, or at least even if it isn't, I'm going along with it. I'm not going to do either one of those things.
God bless you.
You know?
People wear a mask to virtue signal to others. I care about others. And then they put themselves enslaved. It's very sick. Yeah.
Imagine thinking that that's what care is, instead of understanding what is true and helping other people to recognize the truth as well, so they can make accurate, informed decisions in their lives and actually be a responsible human adult.
Right.
I mean, God forbid. We can't have that. You know, that's the thing. It's like, you know what these people are? They're little snot-nosed children.
Right.
And the adults in our society don't want to give them a crack in the back of the head and say, hey, moron, you're an idiot. You're an imbecile. You don't know what you're talking about. You're all screwed up here because you're still a little child up here. You never grew up. You never advanced into mental adulthood. Even if you think you did, you didn't. You failed at that. You failed miserably at that.
For years and years, there's always been, oh, don't talk about politics or religion. It's like a taboo to talk about things that matter, you know, and then everybody wants to talk about the weather, and then they just continue being slaves, you know. And I think that, like, if the masters are telling you what's true and what is moral, and you can't figure it out for yourself, is that a learned helplessness?
I think it's a reflection of just how much brainwashing and mind control they've been hit with from the time that they were young. They're hit with the schooling system, you know, compulsory schooling. They're hit with the bad food, the bad water, the bad air. You know, they're bodily broken down. That affects the brain. You know, as the mind goes, the body goes, and vice versa.
It's directly connected. It's
all a tapestry, an interconnected tapestry. You have to get the body healthy. You have to get the mind healthy. And these people are walking golems. They are flesh robots. They're creatures.
Totally. Perfect slave.
They don't really have a soul as such as we think of having a soul, because the soul is something you work upon during the course of your life. These people have left it at the door. It's sitting out in the cold. They're not really working.
They ignore it. Yeah.
Just leave it there, you know, and let it be completely ignored. Let it be completely desecrated. You know, who cares? You know, and they don't actually understand how rotten of a person that makes them. This is what I think people have to really start saying to other people. They have to openly just say, you're really a piece of trash. Like people have to know that other people think of them as pieces of trash. See, and the thing is there has to be an objective moral standard for that, right? If you're actively trying to determine the truth with the real tool set of factually determining what is real, because you know that's the only thing that could lead to a better world for everybody. is
Right.
embrace of the truth,
Right.
putting it
no
out
matter
there for other
how
people
ugly
to
it
understand.
is, you gotta,
No matter how horrible that
Right.
fact of the matter may be.
Right.
And good people will do that. Bad people will say, I just want to live my selfish life. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Satanism.
I've gotten people actually through conversation with people in my family. I have actually gotten certain people to say this aloud. Now listen to this as far as shadow work goes, because that's what it indirectly is, even though they don't know that's what I was technically doing with them, is a form of shadow work. I have gotten, not going to mention names, people in my family to actually say aloud, because I don't care about what's really going on worldwide as a matter of where freedom is going, and because I only actually focus on my own selfish concerns in life and what I want to do for myself on a daily basis, I know that I'm an immoral piece of shit.
Wow.
Actually said those words aloud,
and they're comfortable
about
with
themselves.
That.
I know
Wow.
I'm not a good person. I know that makes me a bad person.
Wow.
But I don't have the strength or willpower to force myself to do that. Now, that's
that must
better.
have been heartbreaking
Let me
for
tell
you
you
to
this.
hear that. I mean, it's better, I guess.
No, it
right.
wasn't. It wasn't. And here's why. That's good news. That means that they've at least come up in consciousness to recognize where they're at in consciousness.
Right.
That's the very beginning. That's what I had to do. As a black-hearted, rotten piece of trash Satanist, that's what I had to do when I was a rotten, black-hearted piece of trash Satanist.
That was your
which
first
I am
step
no
out.
longer.
Yeah.
Right? You can change. Change is possible. That's the worldview that you have to develop, and you have to start looking at where you're at. And if you are that black-hearted, rotten piece of immoral filth, you have to say to yourself, I'm a black-hearted, rotten piece of immoral filth.
Yeah.
See? And people have to be confronted with that. If they don't hear it, if they never hear that, they can never really start making the worldview shift to then change that.
That's a very good point.
I had to do that internal dialogue with myself through shadow work, right? There was nobody really truly helping me with that. I had some external influences through people writing books, through people making podcasts. Well, podcasts weren't even really around back then, but, sharing whatever,
Be
things
right or go
on
wrong,
cassette or CD,
like that book
things
there.
like that. Yeah. Whatever resources I could find in a library, in a store, etc.
Yeah.
As far as media is concerned, this is even like, around the very beginning of the internet or just before it. I was still involved in Satanism as the internet was really coming along and the web was coming up. Started once the web came out, that's when I really started the process of getting away from that ideology more and more.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I mean,
the first version of Netscape, the web as we know it now, you're looking at late 94, early 95. I got my first own personal computer back in 1995, started understanding the web and doing research, and while I wasn't even appointed priest in the Church of Satan at that time yet, that was the beginning of being able to get information at your fingertips. And that's what ultimately informs and transforms the worldview, is information, is knowledge. The role of knowledge. This is why I started my whole podcast series with these concepts, right? We're going back to the very beginning.
Yeah, episode 1. Right.
And I started that, and I started the the natural law seminar with the importance of the role of knowledge, right? The importance of understanding, even before you even get to what is objective knowledge. We're talking about now, ontology and epistemology, the nature of reality and how to determine truth, right?
Yes.
These are the overarching, concepts that are rolled in the very beginning of not only my podcast, but the natural law seminar. And I started even before we went into knowledge and what truth is, which is simply that which has occurred and is occurring. Before we even did that, I talked about teachability, right? So think about this concept. How teachable is the public? How teachable is any individual? right?
It's
And there's a
pretty
bell
tough with
curve.
their TV. I mean, like real information bounces off and they just suck into the
Correct.
TV. Yeah.
See, that brainwashing signal, that is just something that it's a frequency that's just bombarding them constantly.
Yes.
And even if you break in and you make a little space in there and you break in with a little bit of truth, it's a little injection of truth. It closes right back up as soon as you walk away. That's
You're
the
right.
problem, is that
The
for truth to be
repetition.
accepted,
Okay.
it
Go ahead,
needs,
please.
no, absolutely. You're right. It has to be repeated,
Yeah.
right? It's got to be repeated, right? Said over and over and over again so that it sinks in.
Right.
Once, if I tell people how a web server works once, they're not going to understand it. They're going to be like, "What, Apache? What are you talking about?" Right?
Yeah.
What does serving even mean? People
That's
don't
why
even understand the conceptual idea, right?
Right.
But if I tell them 100 times, okay, you're going to be putting a structure of documents containing
if they care
text.
about it, it'll
Right.
come. If they don't care, though, will it sink in even if 100 times?
I think even if you're not
Maybe.
interested, if you at least pay attention,
Okay.
you can understand something, right?
Right.
But yes, care ultimately to get it deeply sunk in and sunk in relatively quickly. You have to care. You have to
Right.
care enough. And the television is constantly telling people, don't care about this, don't care about that. Care
Right.
about what we tell you to care about. These are the
Yeah.
important things in your reality.
Fear, doubt,
Or our products,
Yeah.
or our
Right.
drugs,
Right. Brought to
our
you by
legalized drug
Pfizer.
system,
Right.
ask your
Yeah.
doctor about that,
Yeah. I mean, well, I just had an episode with Jerry Marzinski talking about psychiatry and how it is built to control people. It is, it makes slaves out of people. It's like a tool for wielding their brain. People should listen to that episode. I think it's 71. Anyhow, so I mean, that's for controlling people that the TV doesn't work. They have to give them, and plus, like when they turn off the TV and they go walk out in the world, the drug keeps them from caring.
Right?
Like that's what these
It established
SSRIs.
certain neural pathways,
Yeah.
just like a regular substance, a regular pharmaceutical substance can also do.
Hmm.
The television, just as a mental bombardment system, can establish certain neural pathways and root them in place, make
Right.
them
And
very
the
difficult
alpha
to
wave,
dislodge.
like we are in a trance state, and in a subliminal state, like we are. Uh, our mind changes how it operates.
And
You know.
the 60 hertz rate as well for most
Yeah.
televisions.
Right.
Computer monitors are starting to go past that now and do a higher frequency. But the 60 hertz rate, 60 flickers per second, really puts the brain in that type of an entrainment state. Now, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's always bad either. It just means that for the purpose of putting information into the mind, that frequency
It's
works
very
very well.
effective.
Right.
Right.
It's effective.
Right.
So
And-
if you put good information onto the screen, it could
Right.
just be just as effective. This is what
Right.
people have to understand, is that these technologies and
That's
these
what we're doing
decisions
here.
for
Like,
implementing them
yeah.
have dual-edged cases. They're dual-edged
right.
swords. They could be used for a variety of purposes.
Yes.
But I want to go back to teachability for a moment,
Please.
because think about how important that concept is. How willing to learn is a person, and how effective of a learner can they become? How efficient how could they incorporate efficiency of learning, right? So that when you hear something, you learn it very well. You learn it quickly and well. I know people who are great learners, who pick up things quickly because they're in that framework of mind
Mhm.
to be a good learner. Okay.
Mhm.
And we could talk about momentarily what that means. But then I know people who are terrible learners. You could teach them something 20, 30, 40, 50 times, and they're almost as clueless as when they first heard the concept to begin with,
Yeah.
which is amazing. It's
very
almost
angering.
it's almost unbelievable
Right.
that it's that much of a dichotomy, that there can be people in all of these different states of consciousness.
Do you think they're trained into that?
It's
From
what they learned when they were young.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an entrainment form because in some way they were told you don't need to truly really learn. You don't need to know this.
You just need to
Don't
sit
bother
down
with
and
that,
shut up.
or just go do something else that makes you
Right.
happy, right?
Oh, or
They
that
were
too.
they were
Yes.
thrown into this idea that life is all about acquiring happiness, that it's not about learning and growing spiritually, right? So if this makes you uncomfortable, just go do something that does make you comfortable and soothes you and makes you feel better and happy.
Right. Have some drugs, have some pornography, have
There
some
you go.
sin, whatever.
Pleasure pursuit. Now, what is
Yeah.
that? That's Satanism,
Yes.
right?
Totally.
The idea that life should only be about self-gratification fulfillment is Satanism. That's the first tenet. Selfishness as the highest rule. Okay.
Yeah.
So ultimately, when people look at the teachability curve, okay, and it's a standard bell curve, right? You have people down at the bottom left who think or who are bad learners because they are either ultra skeptical, and on the other side you have people that believe everything. Okay. In the middle you have people that are
discerning,
generally a little bit skeptical, but they're not wildly over the top ultra skeptics. And you have people that are a little bit trusting, but they're not wildly over the top, I'll believe whatever you tell me. And so they take a balanced approach to learning where I am hearing this, but I'm not accepting it or rejecting it. That's where real learning begins. Real learning begins with I'm willing to hear and entertain in my mind the notion first. Then I'm going to seriously start breaking it down, analyzing it, and using the tools of the trivium and the quadrivium, the real truth discovery methodologies, to make an effort, a sincere effort to determine the veracity of this information. If it is something that has veracity to it. In other
there's
words,
no
whether
inconsistencies
chocolate
in nature.
oat milk ice cream is really delicious or not, there is no veracity to it. That's true for some people, not true for others, because
That's
it's
inherently
based
subjective.
on a matter of opinion. Right.
Right.
Exactly. But for things that aren't subjective inherently, and they have an inherent objectivity to them. Did Michael walk into the post office at 4:00 p.m. on Wednesday of this month, of this week? There is a truth to that. It either happened or it didn't happen, period. And that can be objectively determined through tools, through tool sets that can help us to determine factual reality. So going back to the concept of teachability, people have to make an honest assessment. Where are they at in the teachability scale? Are they automatically dismissing something because the television told them that's a conspiracy theory, which is a bullshit term in and of itself, coming out of the Warren Commission report,
it's a psyop.
Kennedy assassination.
Right, exactly.
You know, the term is to try to say he's inventing scenarios in his mind.
Right.
Not
wild
trying to
ideas.
Say an actual event happened. Many people conspired to make it occur, and we're analyzing that event and trying to determine with the tools of the trivium what factually occurred.
I mean,
that's not theoretical.
Satanism conspires with everything they do. I mean, that's what the rituals are. They have a mastermind. They think the same think. They do the same actions. Like, that's conspiring.
Let's just break down the word conspire from etymological origins. It just means con means together or with, and spiro spirare means to breathe, to be in spirit through breath, because we are inspired or in spirit because we breathe. Spiro spirare means to breathe, respiration. And then the word inspiration comes from that, to be in spirit or bring somebody into a certain spirit.
Isn't it funny that solipsism means you by yourself, and conspiracy is working with others, and conspiracists get things
with
done
others in like spirit or in like mind. You know,
and they conspire to make us solipsistic.
That's
so
right.
that we will never work together with others.
That's right.
We'll never have truth. Yeah,
Atomization.
Wow.
Putting people into a little tiny box by themselves in their own perceptual reality from whence they could never break out because it has become a prison for their mind.
And they've invented this shared reality. I mean, this TV and this media and everything, the Hollywood movies, it's all one message. So this one message must be truth because the TV says it and the movie says it.
And they're the experts. They're the knowledgeable ones. I'm just little old me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
See, I never thought that way. Because I knew how eclectically I studied and read, I never sat there and thought, oh, these people know more than me. I look at talking heads on the television and go, what a dumb shit.
Totally.
Like I know infinitely more than I forgot more than they'll ever learn in 10 lifetimes.
Right.
And that could sound arrogant, but guess what? People don't know what I've taken into myself, as far as information is concerned. Right. I know what I've taken into myself, and it would make most people's heads explode to dust and powder if they even understood the amount of data that I've taken in my life. It's almost superhuman. And I'm not just saying that to brag. I'm saying it frightens even me. I look at it, and I've said before, it's like, what am I, some kind of weird machine? Like I really went obsessive when I understood what was going on in the world in my study. Obsessive.
Well, your teachability factor was so high, and you recognize the value of that, and you put your care into it and put your actions into play, and here you are today. It becomes
a perfect storm.
Right. Right. Everybody should be doing this.
So going back to teachability, are you one of those ultra skeptics? Are you one of those ultra believers? Because guess what? Both of those places are really bad starting points to know the truth. You have to have a nice blend, a nice equilibrium, a combination of healthy skepticism and an open mind. Not so open that you believe anything you're told, but being willing to take it in, not accept it or reject it, and then do further research on your own. And that's not, guess what? That's not actually asking that much, folks. We're at the point in society where we're so imbalanced as a civilization. We're so imbalanced as a whole culture that something so simple, something that seems so reasonable, seems like that's the extremity. And either being a rigid skeptic or an ultra believer, that's the norm. No, those are the extremes.
Right.
They're the ends of the bell curve by which people stay ignorant fools. Okay.
And
you got to get into that thick part of the bell curve where you have healthy skepticism and a questioning, inquisitive mind versus an open mind that can accept some things and not immediately take them in as truth, but to accept them to the extent that or take them in to the extent that you're going to then analyze them and look at them further to determine whether they're true or not. And that's very reasonable. It's a very reasonable approach to studying anything. This is where all pursuit of knowledge should begin. And unfortunately, human beings as a whole society generally don't do that. They come in with preconceived notions and they say, if this matches my preconceived notions, then I'll say it's true. And if it doesn't match my preconceived notions, I'll fight against it till my death.
Right.
That's extremity.
That's right. And when the TV and the movies and everybody are saying the same thing, that reinforces it and it locks it in. And like when we're kids, we're, sit down, read this book. This is true. George Washington did this, and then you don't look at anybody else and you look, and then you don't, it trains people to hate books and to hate because it's like, going to public school is like going to jail,
You're being given a dry, uninspired, very,
no reason to care about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that turns people off to education in general, not even just books, but to educating themselves in general. They look at like, that's not for me. Education is for those, total eggheads that, I really don't want anything to do with. And they're not seeing that it's infinitely more than that when it's self-directed. When it's autodidactic learning, it's infinitely more than what we've been given in what we laughingly call education in schools.
Right. And we know that schooling is a system of mind control, like they're inculcating control handles so that we can be wielded when we get older. We can be good workers at the factory, or we can vote how they want us to, or, so that we believe all of the illusions that our society, has us in.
Yeah, they want obedient workers.
Right,
That's
right.
basically it. They don't want people that can make their own decisions, that can come to
Right.
the truth and come to conclusions accurately for themselves. That's not really of any interest to them, because that doesn't help them
Right.
in their long-term goals of conquering and
Right.
ruling, which is ultimately what we have to put it all in a perspective and in a framework of understanding. That's their ultimate long-term goal, to be
Right.
the masters of this reality, to be the masters of this planet. That's
Man.
another thing. People just don't understand that there are people who that is their goal, that they want to be God, or they want to be part of a little subclass that is considered God, that is considered
Right.
everybody else. Wasn't that the concept of royalty? That's
Yes.
the concept of royalty.
Yeah.
Royalty, we're better than you. We come
Right.
from better stock than you. We're
Right.
better genetically than you.
That hierarchy itself is satanic.
Right.
Like you talked about the chain of obedience.
Right.
And then if you obey an order, you're not choosing with your own free will. So you are negating your morality. So that in itself is satanic.
Yep.
So, I mean, and
let's relate that right there to what you were talking about earlier with people who just as a whole civilization, as a collective, believe whatever the mind controllers tell them to believe
Right.
whatever they see and hear on the television. That's a form of order following.
Yes.
That's such spiritual weakness and mental weakness that you're saying to yourself, I don't have the strength to do the work to determine what is true myself.
Right.
I don't want to do that process. So I'm just going to believe it from an external source, whatever they tell me. This is why I started my whole podcast saying you should never believe what I'm saying. That nobody should believe what I'm saying.
Right.
You should research it for yourself to determine whether what I said was true or not.
Right.
Whether it holds up in actual point of fact reality. And then if it does, then you accept it. But you don't just believe what you're told, okay? And say it's true because he said it's true, right? I don't do that. No one should really ultimately do that.
And that's where
an order follower. You're basically, it's a worldview order follower. You're accepting someone else's worldview as true without investigation. That makes you an order follower. Order followers are the absolute lowest of the low. I mean, just unbelievable that they will say, because somebody else told me to do this and I'm making a paycheck, I'll do it. I mean, imagine being that type of vermin.
It's like a whore. I mean, like a hooker does that, does whatever you say for money.
That's voluntary, right?
Right, that's true.
At least your client wants what you have to give them, right? And they're willing to pay for it, okay? It's a voluntary exchange, right? In an agoristic system, there's no problem with that if both parties agree, right? You could say that that's a vice,
I mean, they can both agree to
take that approach, but
they can both agree to harm themselves. They're free to do so and learn those lessons in this world.
Depending on people's worldview regarding sexuality, yes. But my point is,
as long as it's voluntary,
when it's an order follower with something that actually harms somebody, like military, police, etc., or even people who are putting people out of work as employers,
or the people that work at the grocery store and kick you out because you're not wearing a piece of cloth on your face.
Just accepting the worldview that came to them from their masters and then implementing it for a paycheck. That is just, you can't really get any lower than that. It's the lowest form of life, the lowest form of spiritual existence. The soul is just crushed. It's just murdered. People like that are soul dead. They've literally murdered their own soul.
Yeah. And that's why people are, they think that the root of all evil is money, but money is just the fuel that makes the choice happen. The root of all evil is that following of orders.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of the love of money. right?
Right,
So the
right.
phrase is actually
Which
the
is
love
another
of money
illusion.
is
Right,
the root of evil. And
right,
you could say that is ultimately why they're doing it. They care and love money more than they care about and love truth.
right,
They don't care about truth. They don't care about freedom. They don't care about natural
right.
law. They don't care about morality. They don't care ultimately about the world that they're leaving to their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and everybody
Yeah.
else's
And
progeny.
ultimately, that money just buys them comforts and, sensory feeling
That's it.
good. Like, oh, I'm in a warm house now. I drive a fast car now. Like,
So what does it come back to?
Satanism.
Satanism,
Right.
selfishness.
Yeah.
It's so logically consistent with itself. That's one of the ways that you learn to recognize truth. When
Mm,
you can talk something out and it's perfectly logically consistent with itself, it's true.
right.
Truth is elegant and simplistic like that.
Right.
And when you start to engage the pursuit of it, you'll recognize patterns like that and be able to
Right.
see it in the snap of a finger.
Right. Because it did happen in reality, whatever this, whatever you're speaking of or doing or what, when it happens in the three-dimensional world, it has it is true. It is reality. We have the causal plane where we're of mind, where we think about what we're going to do, and then when we act, and that is when we're putting it into the real world, and then affecting everything else in the real world around us through our will. These are like core understanding of magic and
Manifestation. I mean,
right,
these are the laws of manifestation, the
right,
laws of how we manifest a certain state of existence and reality. People have called it the laws of cause and effect. Of course, they've called it the law of attraction in New Age circles.
mm-hmm.
But all it is the laws of how we manifest our current condition.
Yes,
Both individually and collectively. And,
right,
it's all product of mind. The
right,
solution lies in changing thought.
right,
You cannot change the external reality until thought is changed internally in the mind. Until you
exactly,
change the thought, the external manifestation will continue to occur.
right,
And to believe otherwise is to believe that you can continue to do the same thing and get the result you've always gotten, and then continue to do that thing and suddenly get a different result.
right. Yeah,
It
and
doesn't work like that.
that kind of relates to solipsism too, because if you think in your mind
Yep.
the falsehood that it's going to be different,
Yep.
and you're convinced of this reality that might have told you from the TV or whatnot, and you act again. Oh, whoops!
Yep.
Oh, I'm in
Perfectly
chains
logically
again.
consistent with solipsism.
Right.
Voting this time, even though it's never made our reality any better, can suddenly make our reality better. Total foolish ignorance.
Right.
And again, it
Like
really
children.
is the mindset of it's the mindset of a retarded child,
Yeah.
sadly. Sadly, that's what it is.
Like
If
my
you
son
see
is
a
much
child
smarter
that
than
is
most
stricken
of
with
these people.
a condition
Right.
of human retardation, that
Mhm.
has like Down syndrome or something like that, and you really feel for that being,
Yeah,
because
compassion.
it's like they don't have the capabilities that
Right.
someone else has. Okay.
Right.
And I will actually mock other people that are like, they're adults and they shouldn't be in a condition like that mentally,
Yeah.
but they're in a state where it's like they have a mental retardation condition
They
as an
choose it.
adult when
Right.
they really don't,
Yeah.
and it's actually like an insult to the people that really have that condition. That is how bad their mental state is. It's literally that bad that they are in such a low capacity and vibration of mind that it is like a retardation condition.
Right. And it's why it's tough for us to have.
Physiologically.
It's really tough for me, and I'm sure you as well, to have compassion for people that do have the tools for understanding truth, and they choose, no, I'm going to cause harm.
Right.
I mean, it's so
weakness,
angering. Yes.
It's ignorance. It literally is being a bad person.
Right.
And again, this is the conversation. See, when we were talking about, if you talk it out and it comes to a logical conclusion, you could recognize that as being true. But here's the thing. People don't talk about these things enough. That's the problem, is that the conversation isn't happening. Now, what does conversation mean? Con, versare, to change together. Versare means to change. Universe is the one change, right? Versare means to change. Conversion is changing together. Conversation, changing together. Engaged in a speaking process that can help both parties to change together. Okay?
Because our speech has the ability to change another's mind. Like
That's right.
You said in podcast number 1, you said the most sacred gift we have as humans is speech.
The ability to speak the universe into existence. We are always
Abracadabra.
creating the universe through our voice.
Right.
So what you have to then think of is the proportion and the ratio. How many people in the history of the world have spoken lies for whatever reason, have spoken untruths and propagated untruths?
Infinity
How many people
amount.
are involved in that process now?
Right.
Versus how few people have ever truly spoken the truth to other people so that they could help them to get out of the worldview that results from the speaking of all of those lies.
Right.
Think of one person through the course of their life. Imagine a child, 2, 3, 4 years old, then growing up to be an adult into their 30s and 40s. That one person gauge, ratio-wise, percentage-wise, how many voices did they hear during the course of their entire lives, the media that they ever took in and all the people they ever met that was telling them things that were untrue? Versus how many voices, how many minutes out of the day did a person with the truth actually speak that truth to them through their voice and it reached their ears? And
my whole life growing up,
that it's not a 99.9999999 to whatever decimal to 0.00001%, you're lying to yourself and everybody else.
Right.
Because it is an infinitesimal amount by comparison.
And those few people that did
thank
speak,
God, the power of truth is more powerful than the power of the lie by inherent weight. Right. So that 0.001% could be as powerful, if not more powerful, than the 99.999%.
We just need to engage our voice and make it happen.
More people have to do it.
Right. That Matthias Desmet is talking about the mass formation.
Yes.
And that kind of relates to this this collective solipsism that we're talking about. And there were, in some rebellions and stuff, they were like mothers hanging their own son and thinking of themselves righteous to do so because of the collective. I mean, it's so unbelievably sick. And he said the only way to get out of it is for everybody to speak up.
That's
because once that 0.0000001 person, like you or me or whatever, if we're at the grocery store and we tell them, no, I'm not going to wear a mask because that's bullshit, and then you tell them why, they might not hear, they might not want it, it might not absorb in, but at least it's in there.
Right.
It went in their ears.
You can't unhear something that's been said.
Right.
Once it's said and you heard it, you heard it.
If nobody says it, then it won't ever grow and turn a seed into
They were never hit
fruition.
with that vibration of truth in sound. I don't think literally people don't understand. I'm literal about this. I'm being literal. It's not metaphorical. It's not allegorical. It's literal. They need to be hit with the frequency of words that are true or saying something that is true. That's a frequency response that helps change their internal frequency. This is why using the voice is so important. Using the voice makes you an implement, an instrument of truth. If you're not using the voice for that purpose, you're not doing what you're here to do. You're not doing what your actual purpose here to do is, which is to change the human condition and get it out of the condition of slavery.
If you really think about, like, our soul is on the plane of causation, right? It's not here in this world. It's connected through us to this world, but really the only power it has besides moving our arms and legs is to speak. And that's really where, if this is the realm of Satan and if this is hell, then our higher selves are influencing this place through our speech, and like it comes from like our thoughts and our speech come from a higher place, and that is how we have to affect this world. That is the tools I mean, I
It's
have a
real world
body.
magic. It's real world
That's
influence.
right.
It's
Yes.
action at a distance. This right
Right.
here. If this is functioning here, right, you
Yeah.
have action at a distance
Exactly.
weaponry at your disposal.
Yes.
Okay. That's how powerful the voice is.
Right.
One voice can be that powerful.
Right.
Imagine if millions came together.
Yes.
You know, imagine what kind of mega weapon that is.
Right.
You
It
know,
would
in
be a
the informational
mastermind for
warfare.
good. It would be
Right.
a good mastermind.
That's
We'd all
right.
be conspiring together,
Yep.
and we'd all be free from our solipsism of like, you know.
And to speak to, is Earth hell? Yes, it has
Please.
become hell. It
I
has
think so
become
too.
hell. It's
Yeah.
not inherently hell. I don't think it's inherently hell.
Right.
Is it hell? Is it heaven? Yes, it's both.
Right.
It's both simultaneously, because
Right.
it is a place that can be whatever we want it to be. We
Right.
can convert it into a paradise if we so choose. We can make it an even more devastated, ruined hell if we
Right.
continue to go down the path we're on.
Right.
You know, so the creator has given us free will to create whatever we want. Imagine that gift. And look at that
Yeah.
power. You can make whatever you want. You want to make a
Right.
prison? Go ahead and make a prison. You want to make
Right.
a paradise, a wonderful place for expression and creativity? Go ahead and make that. You
Right.
can make whatever you want. It's your choice.
Right.
It's
I
all
mean,
your choice together.
Exactly. It's obvious that this place and our bodies are not an evil hell. That's not
Right.
what I was getting at.
Yeah, no,
But right,
I wasn't attempting to imply that. Yes.
Of course, right. But the aggregate, like if suffering is real and others can suffer, and then my ignorance of that fact causes more suffering, then when there's a lot more of me doing the same thing just
Yep.
like that, we're all going to suffer together.
Yep.
Right.
And you're literally creating suffering for others who don't want that outcome, that result. So that's
Yeah.
a form of violence.
Right.
You know, ignorance about freedom, about rights, about how the human condition manifests. I don't see that as a right. You know, and I know that's a controversial thing for a lot of people. You know, you have the right to be ignorant about, well, how do I make a really good tasting peach iced tea? You could be ignorant about that, about what kind of tea to use, how long to steep it, you know, how much peach flavoring or, you know, natural peach juice to add, whatever. You could be ignorant about that. Nobody needs to know that, right?
Right.
If you want to learn it, great. If you want to go and give your family some nice peach iced tea, great. Okay.
Sounds good. I might
No
want some.
one has to learn that. You're
Right.
not required to know that. You can make a choice to know that, or you could remain ignorant of it. That's your free will. That's your right. When it comes to what is a right because it doesn't harm other people versus what is a wrong because it does harm other people, you don't really have the right to say, I don't want to know that. I don't care about that.
Right.
That's not your right because it affects others. Because if you
Yes.
don't know that, your behavior affects other people and creates suffering for them.
Right.
Literally, the ignorance of that creates suffering for others. Because what if
Exactly.
everybody's ignorant of that and a colossal police state is taking over and restricting everybody's rights and, you know, killing people, taking their rights, taking their life? They don't have the right to do that. But the people who made that happen
Right.
don't have the right to remain ignorant, because
Yes.
that ignorance is literally the causal factor that made that
Right.
condition happen. And that's
Ignorance
where we're at.
is violence when it's in action. When ignorance combined with people's actions creates violence against others. They're violating other people's rights to be sovereign and unhindered, free individuals.
Yep.
You know.
And again, that starts with the ignorance of what rights are, what objective morality is. These are the things that we have to make our children learn and understand. See,
Yeah.
it's the It's the
Common
steward's
sense.
role in the steward-ward relationship of parent and child, because that's really what it is. It's not an owner and property relationship. It's a steward and ward relationship.
Yeah.
The steward cares for the ward until the ward can make effective and accurately informed decisions for themselves. Okay, so that's the proper role of a parent. If the parent doesn't actually instill, and I mean it's a forceful word, you have to instill morality into the child. It means that you have to, when they're a ward, the parent has to look at it. This child should not have a choice when it comes to learning morality. And honestly, at that point in the relationship, the child should not have the right to refuse the lessons of morality and understanding what is a right and why, what is a wrong and why. Yeah. Why is this objective? Why does this matter? Why does this affect other people? Because they're going to go out into the world and their behavior is going to affect other people.
Exactly.
And collectively, human parenting has failed so disgracefully that what human parents, as the horrible, miserable failure of a job that they have done as parents has done, is create a whole civilization of children who have grown up into biological adulthood, but their mentation is still that of a snot-nosed punk child.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yes, and that is compounded as the generations go on.
That's right, because then a snot-nosed punk child is going to give rise to another snot-nosed punk child in an adult body.
And worse.
Right.
You know, and how many years has like the media and this, how many years have they been pushing what they have come to fruition today? I mean, there was the greatest generation, which were killed off, like many of them killed in World War II and everything. And then they came home, had the baby boom, and those people were given total Satanism, like hedonism, don't care. And then they grow up to divorce, and then all they care about is themselves. And
I'm going to pick up for
neglect
Gen
their
X.
children.
I think Gen X is maybe our only hope.
That's me.
Maybe our only hope.
We're here.
It went like this. It started descending, and then Gen X was this bump.
Little bump.
Right? And then we went like this with millennials
There's
and
still
Zs.
Potential, though. I mean,
with Y and Z,
it
dropped off a cliff. With
I know
Z,
some
yes,
good ones.
there's a little bit. We might be hitting that bottom and turning up this way a little bit with Z, because they're realizing how bad the millennial generation has screwed them.
Right, and the millennials have come from. I mean, like Gen X came from the baby boomers, and we, like me, I see my parents, and no offense to you guys, but they're very selfish.
Yeah.
And they, I had divorce, and they cared so much about themselves and not the family. They're like, oh, I don't care. And now they're still like this. And if I try to talk to them about something that matters, they say, nope, that hurts. I don't want to think that.
They really inculcated them into a sensate consciousness. Of it's only about my feelings and my comfort. It was a very comfort-related generation. The television did that. The schooling system did that. The propaganda that they were hit with post-World War II was so about convenience, comfort, avoidance of
electric
pain.
Kitchen. Oh, my wife wears pearls when she does the vacuuming.
I think our generation was, Gen X was the one that, we started getting hit with. Of course, different forms of propaganda, but it started really culturally. Like, you guys are going to have to be the superheroes. Like this is the the allegory of the superhero generation. Where if it's going to fall to you, and if you shirk this responsibility, the world's going to fall into total disarray. You have to be the modern day real life superhero.
We have to be and being that is to make great children. Not be afraid of having kids, not being like, oh, this world's too satanic, I don't want to bring a kid into this world, because then we leave them the world. We're gone and they have it. Like, what kind of
that's why conscious parenting has to be one of the major things that people discuss and talk about, because if we fail as parents and people who are influencing the younger generations, I mean, what are we leaving the future to? What kind of, we're putting the future into their hands and leaving it to them, and they're not going to be equipped to deal with it.
Exactly that. And we even give them, the kids that we have now, people send our kids to schools there. They're getting sprayed with chemicals. They're getting jabbed, they're getting, masks, and they're getting all this propaganda. They got drag queens telling them stories and say, if you don't think a drag queen could teach a kid a story, then you're a bad guy. Like, this is total opposite. And we see that Satanism is trying to take the next generation. Like, that's why the masks on a 2-year-old, they're going to grow up to think, oh, I have to do this for the collective, I think that the 2030 and this next generation, that's when I think those are the ones that survive the culling and are so scared to be culled that they'll do whatever the masters say. That is the fruition of their pure satanic society, I think. It's coming soon.
They want to model like what communist China is already implementing. And you're starting to see even some pushback there, which is a somewhat encouraging sign. Yeah. Hopefully that will continue.
Please do.
But, that's what they want. They want a fully, a communistic society implemented worldwide as one huge global village of communism. They tested the waters to see if fascism,
no more individuality,
would be the way that the political minded generations would want to go, and that turned out not to be the model. So they had communism waiting in the wings. It was already established, actually, and they just wanted to see which one of those ideologies would really win the minds of the brainwashed masses, and it seems to have been communism.
And ultimately it's just collectivism, the fascism, and it's all the same, like just different, manifestations.
People who have
of that
no
same
allegiance to truth, who have no understanding of objective morality, implementing their authoritarian and totalitarian systems. I mean, it's amazing to me that people in America are authoritarian. The whole country was founded on the idea of individual freedom, and because they're afraid. Again, to go back to this idea that they were failed by their parents. They were failed by all of society in being educated properly. But, it starts at the family unit level, with parenting. And their parents taught their children to be fearful children for their entire lives. That is why people don't want the individual responsibility that comes hand in hand with freedom. They hear freedom. The word freedom to these people in America today is a dirty word. The word freedom is a curse word to them, literally, because they know intuitively that what it implies is you must be responsible for your own life. You must be responsible for knowing, for caring, and for implementing the truth. And they want no part of that. They want abdication from personal responsibility. That's ultimately what these foolish children want.
It's so strange to me, because that I want to be self-actualized and be powerful in my own actions and will. Like, it seems like anybody would want to be able to make their own choices and to have freedom. Like, why? How could they be trained into hating their own freedom?
I'll give you this scenario. Imagine how dumb someone has to be to think this way. Imagine how completely failed educationally and parentally a being has to be worked into this mental condition that I'm going to describe. So in America, the average adult in major populated regions actually believes that the purpose of the media is to research what's really going on and then accurately report the truth to the population. And I myself, with friends, have gone into big populated pubs in Philadelphia and conducted social experiments. We have the data. We've done this, okay? Where we've gone into a pub and just said, we're conducting a quick, social survey, and we just go in, do it, leave, and see what the data says. And we just go in and say, we're doing a real quick social experiment. Do you think that the mainstream media is attempting to accurately report the facts, and that is really what they're doing, and they're really making a sincere effort to do that? And
yeah.
Sean, 100%. Listen, folks, listen to what I'm saying right here. Listen, 100%, 100%. Not one person said in these experiments that we did, the media are paid liars. Not a one.
Oh.
Almost every person in our populated regions of our society, if you're not going out into the countryside, into the sparse populations, in the cities, we did this in city pubs.
Right.
100% of human beings said the media is there trying to tell us the truth. They're trying to do their job to the best of their ability. And sometimes they may get some information incorrect, but that's not on purpose. They are willfully attempting to report what is true. Imagine this.
I mean, I can imagine because I believe I've seen it. Yeah.
Fucking dolt.
Yeah.
Someone has to be to believe that absolute bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
Imagine. And that's what we have. We have grown children in our midst.
And they're not teachable.
Is grown, dumb children.
Yeah.
Grown, dumb children is what we have in America. Right. And, there's somebody told this story where I can't recall who it was. Their friend was from communist China, came here to the United States and said to them, people in China know that the news that is broadcast in China is total state propaganda. Yeah. Said this to them. Why don't you guys know this in America? Because they were obviously in a populated city where there's a bunch of grown, dumbass grown children in their midst. And they realized these people actually watch the news and believe that what they're saying is true and that they're trying to report the truth. This is where we are still at. Folks,
at least those Chinese
are there, man.
They're teachable. We're not, because we believe anything. We're on the people you're describing are on that end of the teachability spectrum where anything that goes in, I believe it. Yeah. They're not skeptical at all.
It's 2022, and in America, the dumb-ass grown child population still believes the nightly news is telling them what's true. Imagine how dumb does a human being, rat being, have to be to believe that bullshit. Imagine that. Again, folks, this speaks directly to the fact that we're not speaking enough. There's not enough speech reaching their vibratory field of frequency with the truth frequency. We're not reaching it. We're failing. We're failing here in the voice. We're failing here in the voice.
Right.
Okay. That's the problem. Is that there's still not enough people speaking the truth out into the world, and that frequency is being overwhelmed by the propaganda frequency of the state. And the testimony to that is go into a populated restaurant or pub in an American major city. I'm not talking about out in the countryside.
The Quakers might tell you different. Right.
Go in a center city of a city. Go into the middle of Los Angeles. Go into the middle of Chicago. Go into the middle of New York. Go into the middle of Philadelphia. Go in the middle of Atlanta. And say to people, do you believe that the mainstream media is attempting to tell the American public the truth about any given topic that they report on? You'll see what they'll say. Yeah. And I guarantee you, if you don't get 99-to-1 ratio or at least 95-to-5 ratio, people are lying about the result. Believe me, because that's where it is. And again, that's a testimony. That tells the truth that our side is failing.
Right.
We're not doing our job effectively enough and in great enough numbers. We don't have enough conversion of people to commit their lives to doing this type of stuff, to telling the truth. And that's the problem. People have to make a life commitment of this. It's not just saying it to your mom or your niece or your nephew or your brother. It's saying it to everybody. And the only way you can make your voice reach everybody, if they so choose to hear it, is to learn technology and to put your information out on the internet and have your own website so that people can go and visit and see what you have to say. That's how you actually do it. You don't do it by
your words
walking
got
out
to
into
my
a subway
ear.
car, picking the first vagrant and saying, let me have a conversation with you about this. You know, and maybe they'd be more apt to accepting it than your own family members, unfortunately.
That's true. Yeah. But I mean, at least with the internet, they have to click like it's a choice.
That's right.
And they desire to hear it. You know, if I tell my family, they don't want to hear that. You know, they think you're crazy. Get away. You hurt my ears with your whatever. It's
let
funny.
me speak to that dynamic real quick, Sean, because when it comes to family members, you have to have multiple people come in and say something to them. They're not going to take it just from you. So I'll have somebody, and I'll say to them who I know knows what's going on. I want you to be brutal with my family member. You may never want to go around them again, creating the discomfort that you're going to create. But when I take you near them and I say something, and they say what they think, I want you to be brutal with what you know. I don't want you to hold back. I want you to tell them how ignorant they are. I want you to tell them how much it makes them a bad person that they've remained that ignorant. And I just let them go if they're willing to do it.
I would love to be at your Thanksgiving. I want to be there.
Well, I don't even attend things like that.
Yeah,
you know what
kidding.
I mean? I make it clear. I don't attend family functions like that for the reason that you are all bad people. I say that to my family members. You ignore what is true. You ignore freedom. You don't care about the future generations. You're only concerned with your own selfish comfort. That makes you bad, and I don't really want to be affiliated with you. Occasionally, if because of out of convenience, we still do some things for each other for a utilitarian purpose, and you need me to come and help you do something, I'll do it. I may ask you to do me a favor. That's about the extent of the nature of my family life, unfortunately, because they will not activate and make the decision. This is this bad. We have to speak out against it, you know? And so I just say openly, you know, I don't really want to be affiliated with you as people that I make a willful decision to hang out around in any kind of a social capacity. So I just don't do it.
That's what it took for you to get out of the cult of Satanism. You know, you got to get out of the cult
is
of
to
your
say I
family,
don't agree
too.
with what you're doing morally. I'm not going to be here anymore.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah. And that's what it takes. And then once you're free of them, you don't have their influence anymore. And then you have a clearer thinking pattern, you know, like you don't have that that poison going in your ear from their mouth and their perspective. So it's, you know, if you can get away from the city too, get away from all those people, like you can find yourself a lot easier, and you can find reality too. Like the Buddha put his fingers down on the ground. That's the witness. Like I'm here in reality, like that. And that's what changed everything. You know, the temptations flew away. The influences of Mara, of the Satan force disappears, because he's acting in this world, in reality, with his compassion. I mean, it's a beautiful story. And anyway,
it's being anchored spiritually. You know? It's having your head in the stars, as you know, the Hermeticists might have put it, but having your feet firmly rooted in the ground.
That's right.
You know, you're walking on the earth. You're taking the lessons down to earth, incorporating them in a practical way, and you know, but you're bringing high-minded ideas down, you know, into that earthly, you know, usage.
That's right. Our body is the vessel that our soul can speak through. Like that's what we do. And you listen to like Terrence McKenna talking about, like, taking Datura and DMT, and he sees these beings that speak objects,
Right.
like they create with their mouth, and
They're
like
literally geometrically showing you how reality works. It's spoken into existence through vibratory form through the voice.
Amazing.
I hope we can get that idea across to people effectively, Sean.
Yes.
They need to really understand it viscerally, that the power of the voice is what we are here to enact.
That's right.
Action at a distance. It's true magic.
That's right. And that's how we can free our fellow man. We can free our family. We can help to free everybody we come in contact with. We can speak it out, and then we can get a computer with a video camera and a microphone, and we can speak it into that too.
That's right.
And that's how I heard your voice. That's how others have heard my voice.
Right.
And now that you've been gracious enough to give me a place on your network, and I've been working with my own podcast now for a couple of years, and I've been there with you. And now that I'm in the groove of it, these ideas come up. They just come from inside, and I have to speak them. It's like this, and it makes me feel better to speak them. It's like,
of course,
it helps my own self to be in this hellish world. Like, if I don't speak it out, then I am not helping my own reality too. Like, we all need to do this. And as Matthias Desmet said, that's the way we fight the mass formation. And the mass formation is the illusion of collectivism, what G. Edward Griffin has been teaching us for 50 years.
Yep.
Like, the illusion of collective, there is no collective. Like, the forest is an idea. There's only trees. Each one is an individual.
Yep.
And if we can get to the reality of understanding I own myself, I am free, and others also own themselves and are free, then we can all be trees in this wonderful forest together. We can imagine what kind of forest we want to be part of.
That's the very idea of no masters, no slaves, because we're all inherently sovereign beings, equal in our rights under natural law.
That's the truth, right? Like, we are living in anarchy. We just are too busy following illusions and orders of others. Like, in reality, there are no rulers. I do have free will. Joe Biden can say whatever he wants. I choose my actions. That makes me free. God bless you for teaching us all of this. I mean, your work has infinitely helped the world, and the longer you're here doing it, the more grateful I am. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. And I'd say a very, very excellent interview with great questions, which went in a unique direction. So
awesome.
Thank you for that as well.
Oh, it's
and
my
for the
pleasure.
work that you're putting forward on One Great Work Network and your own, website as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Wake the Dead has turned into a thing, and we've got James Cordner and I, my good friend James, who's also on the network. We are starting together a new show. Our first episode is already out. It's called Black Pill Digest.
Yes.
And this is looking at the truth. And no matter how rough and tough it seems that it is, and we would love to have you on someday if we can schedule that. Our topics are going to be like very important things, and you have a very powerful voice, and we would love to have you join us someday.
Sure. I'll be doing some new rounds of interviews coming up next year in early 2023. So let's set something up for then.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark.
Great.
And thank you again. Everybody needs to check out What on Earth is Happening. I mean, the podcast is it's a hammer that'll hit your brain with reality. And if everybody needs to give it a try, give it a listen. Start at number 1. It unfolds, and you build upon the other episodes. And now your current episodes, which I hope you're going to be you said you'd be 6 months on, 6 months off.
I'll be coming back Sunday, January 8th, if all goes to plan.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. We very much look forward to that. And we can find those episodes on whatonearthishappening.com. And I'm sure you'll also be broadcasting them on the onegreatworknetwork.com. Yes. And thank you so much,
We
Mark.
do replays during any of the time that I'm not live. So there's a replay streaming server right here in this office. And basically, we replay all old broadcasts of What on Earth is Happening podcast shows.
Awesome.
During any time when I'm not actively live, which is from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Sundays from January through June. So any other time other than that, we're replaying old episodes at whatonearthishappening.com.
Well, every episode is relevant today because they all deal with the mind and its place in the world. I mean, you're not talking about, oh, this happened today and we should be mad about this news item. Like you're talking about the self and the relation to I guess I can't describe what you're talking about, but people need to listen to it because
the causal factors is how I describe it. We're not talking about the individual events, worldly events. We're talking about causal factors that lead to manifestation.
Yes.
And if you understand the causes, then you can ultimately change the effects if you change the causal factors.
That's wonderful.
And that happens in the mind. That's where
that's right.
The plane of causality is the mental level. And when we change that, then we could change the manifested level, the plane of effects.
That's right. And we can, our actions can create the vibrations of words that go into an ear that goes right into their heads, So it is affecting their causal realm.
That's right.
You can slap them in the face and that affects their reality of the happening now, like the effect world. But if you say it into their ear, that's where the worm gets in, and that affects the future.
Resonate into the future. That's right. Exactly.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And people also need to check out the Natural Law seminar and your new documentary that you just created, The Science of Natural Law. That's not the seminar is pretty long. You really packed a lot of information in that DVD, Science of Natural Law.
Yes.
And
that's the condensed version, about a little over an hour. And could check that out at the top of my video section. As a matter of fact, right under it then is the Natural Law seminar.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mark. And we will see you next time.
Take care.
Well,
everyone.
If you get. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us on Wake the Dead.
Thanks, Sean.